All right, so today we're going to talk about Notes 12, and that's going to be the Stolen Rebellion, one of the earliest rebellions within the continental United States, within colonial America, about the treatment of slaves and how they were tired of being mistreated and how they should have been treated more humane. So as early as 1698, the assembly began to worry that there were too many slaves in the colony. The demand for slaves created a population imbalance in South Carolina. That imbalance was 2 to 1. So for every 2 African Americans in the South Carolina, there was only one white individual, and this caused fear to grow within the colony of South Carolina. You got to remember, as we talked about before, the power in South Carolina was with those rich white plantation owners because they had the money, they had the land, they had the power. And we talked about yesterday about how not necessarily we treated our African slaves properly and humanely, and we didn't. Again, we talked about how there was some that treated them a little bit better, but across the board overall, we did not treat them humanely. And that's where the fear came about, because they're outnumbered, because they know they treated them poorly just so they can make a profit and grow their own business for selfish reasons. That's where this fear came about within South Carolina. So the Stolen Rebellion was a slave revolt that took place on September 9th, 1739 within Charleston, South Carolina. As you can see over here within the picture, a placard is within the state of South Carolina down there towards Charlestown that goes over the Stolen Rebellion. And this uprising it took place when a small group of slaves are going to break into a store on the Stolen River, and they're going to kill 2 settlers. We talked about yesterday how their culture brought over the drums, how the drums communicated between different plantations. Well, they used their drums to symbolize that this rebellion was going on, to get more and more and more slaves to join them. And by the end of the day, the settlers came to reclaim their slaves and to reclaim order. So the settlers killed slaves killed settlers, so many people died. As we can see in the placard, at least 20 whites had died, but many others were spared. On terms of the slave side, about 34 of them were killed. So here, tough day within the Carolina with this uprising. And so by the end of the day, we talked about settlers and slaves had been killed. 80 slaves participated in this rebellion. And one or two things happened. Number one, they were killed during the fighting, or they were executed after they were captured. So the whites did regain order within South Carolina. And the South Carolina white powers to be within the assembly, within the government, is going to ensure that another slave revolt does not take place in South Carolina. So a lot of rights, freedoms that they had before, which again was very little, are going to be stripped down even less. So they literally, at the end of this, will have no rights and no freedoms on their plantations because of the fear of a revolt and the fear that would happen to those white plantation owners of those African slaves who were able to gain control and power. And so tomorrow we'll talk about the effects of the Stolen Rebellion that sets a tone across not only the colony of Carolina, but across the southern colonies as well.